Hello everyone, we are live. We're going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes to have everyone join in the meantime. But before that, welcome Andrei, Hungku and Anna. Thanks for joining. How's it going? How are you all doing?
Fine. Hello everybody.
Hi.
Putem spune și bună seara.
Yeah.
For a part of the audience.
Hey, we're seeing some hellos in the chat. Bună seara to you too. Thanks for joining. All right, so I think we're good to begin. People are still coming in, but I'm gonna go through the welcome before everyone else joins. So first, thanks everyone for joining. This is the second edition of our Getting Started with SeedBlink sessions. And just as a quick recap, we do those sessions and we try to do them monthly because we noticed a demand on, or rather a need to answer certain questions related to what's it like being an investor in general, advices, and how to use the SeedBlink platform specifically. Last edition, we had Anna, our community manager, who helped answer a lot of technical questions regarding the investment process. And today, the star of today's show is Andrei Dudoiu, who is one of our founding members and member of the board, and is here to help answer a lot of questions in a more general sense about the investment best practices about investing, and also share some of the latest updates that we have from SeedBlink. So Andrei and everyone else, thanks for joining. Thanks for giving me the time of your day to do this. Before I pass it on, just a few housekeeping items. We will be recording this webinar and we will be posting it on our YouTube channel. So if you have to drop at any time, well, first we would appreciate if you wouldn't, but if you have to, it's fine. You can find all the questions answered online. We will be, Andrei is going to take 10 to 15 minutes to go through a presentation, a few slides on general topics regarding related to investment and SeedBlink. But after that, the remaining of 45 or 40 minutes are dedicated to answering your questions directly live. So just feel free to write any question you have at any point in the QA section of this webinar, and we will get to answering all of them hopefully by the end of the webinar. If we miss some, don't worry, we will follow up with you on email and answer them. So I think that covers all the housekeeping items. That being said, Andrei, thanks again for joining, and I'm going to pass it on to you for that presentation.
Hello, thank you, Vlad, for making this moderation possible. Otherwise, I was used to play this role, so I'm relaxed now, having such a good moderator here on board. And of course, thank you, Anna and Andrei, for joining us. I'm the co-founder and also managing partner for SeedBlink, and as you know, I'm not a specialist in any of their fields. That's why Anna in charge with operations and Andrei in charge with legal advising, and he's a legal counselor with us. They will help me if some specific questions will arise. Or if I'm losing my voice, hopefully not. I have a very soft form of COVID got several days ago from my small son who is unvaccinated, but I have 3 doses, so I quite don't feel this as being disturbing in any way than losing my voice from time to time, but it's fine. I'll try to share the screen and the presentation just to make a brief presentation of what we are doing at SeedBlink for the audience that is not used so much with us. And the most important part of our event is the Q&A session that again will be moderated by Vlad. And I'm covering in 15 minutes the monologue, and then we'll start the dialogue with you.
Sounds great, Andrei.
I'm trying to find the okay. The last version should be open, but Zoom is not seeing it. I cannot open it in Zoom. Maybe Vlad, if you have the last version of the okay, now it's working. I hope.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think it's fine now. We can see it.
For SeedBlink, we are, as you know, an investment platform in tech startups. The very new achievement that we shared also with our investors, because we have our own investors. An important part of our shareholders are coming directly from our investors community, and the total community of investors just exceeded 7,500 investors from 45 different countries. Of course, being grown in Romania, and our home market is in Romania. 80% of our investors are having a connection with Romania, but we are very glad that we started very very, let's say, concrete our international expansion. We so far facilitated 59 campaigns of raising equity through SeedBlink, with total investments more than 36 million euro, and 40% of this amount is coming from our direct investors from our community, and the difference is coming from different partnerships we have with local and regional VCs, angels of networks, and different corporations. We already have done 4 follow-up investments, although our platform has started less than 2 years ago. More and more startups that got funding through SeedBlink last year came for a follow-on. That's a clear sign that they are on a good track. And there are at least, we counted yesterday, another 9 startups that are preparing for such a follow-on round. Recently, yeah, it was very well covered in the international press, not only in Romania. The FlowX AI that raised 8.5 million, which is in euro 7.3 million euro round, out of which more than 21% of the round was coming from SeedBlink community of investors, and 1.6 million euro in figures, and that made us more famous also abroad, but also we have been very honored and happy that we could offer this opportunity to our active investors. Why, in a few words or a few sentences, why to invest through SeedBlink? We have a screening process, and I think we have also a number, but it's not here disclosed so far. Our team have met more than 1,500 startups in the last almost 2 years, out of which, as I mentioned, less than 60 were officially organizing campaigns on our platform. We have a curating. We are making a curation to the startups. We are providing deal diversification, and we are managing the follow-ons, and of course helping with facilitating the exits. We have an exclusive community. We are now starting. We mentioned the deal with FlowX AI.
You enjoy.
I think it was noise coming from
yeah,
somewhere.
Let's ignore that.
Yeah, we have organized for FlowX AI, just as an example, a private deal room. We have started with this approach, and more deals depends on the startup and the need of the startup will be organized like that. We are the existing investors know that we are organizing a portfolio management. We are helping with the investment thesis, although this is still under construction and will be much more visible probably next year. We are offering, we'll be offering more and more tools for making the strategy and more analytics about how we can help the investors with building their portfolio. Not insisting on the experience that we have, but we are very happy as co-founders and the management team that more and more very well-regarded professionals have joined our team and for helping also the investors for getting better performance on their investments. And you already know, most of you, that the minimum ticket is starting at 2,500, which is not a small amount. On the other side, we with this kind of minimum ticket, we have built a community of investors that are much more aware about the risk or the knowledge how to invest in startups, in tech startups, and we are helping further for this better performance and better assessing the risks. Okay, trying to scroll it, but it seems okay. Also taken from my colleagues, I am just sharing with you a very brief and very general advices of best practices on getting returns on investing in tech startups. I already mentioned the investment thesis, and will help you out more with the technology, especially next year. Will be more and more tools. We'll have more and more tools ready for using in this respect. Of course, diversification is critical, and it's probably one of the most important advices that each former investor in this universe could advise you with. Of course, there are different categories of diversification, and again, the technology that we are building will help you in this respect. Taking advantage of preemption rights, we already mentioned the follow-on rounds. There is a clear sign that the startup is on a good track. There are new investors that are financing them. Then, as we already mentioned, SeedBlink is one of the few crowd investing platforms that is facilitating this for the investors through SeedBlink. And actually, this is an approach where the VCs, for example, are making the profits from, because it's a clearer path for the startup that is is gaining traction, and once it is getting more funding for growing the business. Of course, participating in the support of the startup, we have more and more investors that are trying to help, both with their knowledge or with the network they have in the area the startup is acting. And of course, the constant learning that is always advisable for in each area of you want to gain experience with. And of course, in investment is more than recommended. And we are trying to help more and more in this respect as well. Portfolio diversification, it was clear. I mentioned it's the most important advice, and it's the path we want to build the advices on and the technology that we are building. And there are some simple rules described here that you can see with 80-20 rule, and no more than 15% of your portfolio to be invested in just in one single company. Spread the risk across multiple startups, geographies, industries, and stages, and use, as already mentioned, the preemption right if you are trusting more and more the startup that is on a good track. How to assess risk? It's critical for this universe, also for the services that we are providing as a platform. We are not just making a disclaimer from time to time that you should be very careful with the way you are investing in startups, because in general everybody knows, or at least the community that was raised along SeedBlink is aware that investing in startups it's one of the assets that you could have with higher risks, because talking about startups, they have all kind of obstacles. They are the beginning. You cannot foresee the future exactly for a startup, but you can have different ways to assess the risk and to invest your money, having more confidence that the team or the product or the market itself, the total addressable market is generating more potential, and so on and so forth. Of course, we advise you to pay a lot of attention to the documents that we are filtering and trying to provide as much clarity as possible to our investors. This is our role. Of course, the information provided there, if we have an institutional investor, we have a due diligence made by such an investor. Otherwise we make our own due diligence, but on the other side, you as investors, you are taking the risk, so you should assess as careful as possible where you are placing the money, your money. Of course, I'm coming back from time to time to this portfolio approach and investment thesis that we'll also working on with the technology to help you with. And of course, there are some other ways to you as an investor to test the product and to get more information either on the web or from your community about team of founders or about that specific market they are addressing. Here, and I think this is the last slide that we have prepared, and is a sort of teaser for a webinar that will follow and will be organized by my colleagues, experts on the legal side. We as a platform, besides filtering and curating and vetting the startups that we are putting on the platform, we are acting on behalf of our investors, the community of investors, with this kind of rights that we are negotiating, the preemption right that was already addressed several times in the presentation, the down round protection, tag along, liquidation, right of first refusal, and some reserve matters. These are the most important clauses or covenants that are part of a typical shareholder agreement that is negotiated by our legal advisor on behalf of our investors, and is the kind of protection with our knowledge and invest in this knowledge further on to offer the protection for our investors. We declared several times that our main client and our main driver is the community of investors that we are building, and we are staying along with you, and we are of course supporting the startups together, but you are our main partner. So, but again, this kind of technical assimilation of this kind of covenants and other clauses will be analyzed in more detail by my colleagues soon. So I'm done with the monologue.
All right, thanks for that monologue, Andrei. I think it was really, really useful. And by the way, you're really on point with the 20 minutes that you promised. You can see that hundreds of webinars experience that you have. One thing I would add, and I think you mentioned this about the webinar that we're planning to do on the legal side of things and the benefits that we offer, the rights that we offer with Andrei Hunku from our legal team. That's going to come pretty soon. I think it's next month. And what I wanted to mention is that we are planning quite a full schedule of other such events on different topics. So I think pretty much everything that you quickly covered today in the presentation, we are at some point in the near future going to go into more detail into as part of our academy series of events. I just wanted to leave that out there as a teaser. But that being said, are you ready to get into the questions?
Looking forward.
All right, here's an easy one to get you started. Does SeedBlink serve globally, or are we restricted to some countries?
Yeah, it's a good question. I will make a reference to the legislation that actually just came into force yesterday, 10th of November, across Europe. It's a regulation that affects the crowdfunding and crowd lending platforms, and it's available across Europe in all the members of the EU countries, and we are for the time being, the next future, we are sticking to Europe. That's important to be said. Of course, we don't have any specific restrictions in some other countries. I could say we have a very strict restriction to going to US and to address US investors, because they have a very tough legislation on this respect. Only the how do they call them, the experienced or the accredited investors could be targeted by for specific investment offers. Otherwise, the retail investors in US could not be approached, only if you have a special license from there. But again, our main focus is Europe, and talking about Turkey, I'm not prepared with with a straight answer if we have any specific restrictions. I know that we have some VCs that have an important hub there. We should look into it if there is a specific request, and the startup is covering our general terms for what we need for a startup to be part of SeedBlink platform, and of course we can discuss.
All right, great, thank you. And I would just say that applies to both startups and investors. So we're focused on Europe for both of those audiences. All right, on to the next question, and this is related. You mentioned a bit about the new European regulations. So this next question asks, how do we plan to improve the liquidity process in the perspective of those new regulations?
Yeah, indeed, the new European regulation is creating, let's say, an entry level for this kind of liquidity, meaning a secondary market for the shares or for the stakes that an investor will have in a specific startup or company listed on a crowdfunding platform, but not in the sense that we'll make a trading for them. We will be able to to publish the demand and the offer for different companies that are part of our platform. And on the other side, we consider this is a good start for going to the next level and have organize a secondary market. We'll have a plan for in this respect. I'm not sure about the deadline because we have to clarify all these legal frameworks. Of course, we can link to a different trading platform that could organize this for us, and it's a different license for this kind of activity of making trading, but we are looking into it for sure. On the other hand, the investors that are used with this kind of investments in startups are normally acting as a long run investor, looking to the more developed markets, especially UK and US. The average expectation for appearing a liquidity event, meaning an exit or let's say maybe a IPO for a company, but IPO it's even a longer term. But normally it's an investment on average, I would say, on 4 or 5 years. Of course, there are also deviation from this average. But on the other side, I think if we have a liquidity or a secondary market will help for the investors to have such a buffer in the case they need an part of their money invested in startups. But and I would also make again this advice: we don't advise any investor to put their money, their reserve money, in this kind of active, in this kind of investment assets. They should consider it as being class of assets that are not easy to liquidate in the day one.
Yeah. All right. Okay. On to the next question, and this is slightly related. How involved with the startup post investment should or is the average investor on SeedBlink? So what happens after the investment, I guess, is the more broader question.
What happens with the startup after the investment is done?
Yeah, so I think the question is the investor actively helping the startup besides the money they invest?
It is quite. We are encouraging this kind of approach. Actually, the founders, the alumni that we have in our portfolio, the startups founders, are requesting this kind of support. We have very active investors already that provided the startups because they have a common interest already. Once you become an investor and a shareholder in a startup, you are trying to get the most of that investment. And so once you are able to help them with your network, with your expertise in that industry, or even mentoring from time to time on a specific issue, of course, there is added value, and of course we are providing for motivating that. We are providing quarterly reports. There is a tool already. The active investors now they are using my portfolio, where we publish on a quarterly basis the results, the highlights and the lowlights published by our alumni portfolio, the startups, let's say the 60 startups that we have in the portfolio. And there are some. In more and more cases, we have noticed that the founders are requesting specific feedback or specific help that could be provided by the investors.
Yeah, and we do have some in-product ways of facilitating that, I would say. I think Anna went a bit more in depth on that in our latest webinar. So we try to make the communication between the investor and the startup as easy as possible. All right, the next question.
Yeah, that's important also for the future, because we are trying to create a community between the startups and, of course, a community of investors that we already built, but to develop it further and also improving the communication between the two pillars of our platform.
Yeah.
Also, we are organizing periodically events with founders and investors to meet each other, to talk to the investors can send their suggestion to the founder and also ask all the questions and all the information they need from the founder.
Yep, thank you, Anna, for that. Okay, on to the next question, and I have two questions related to the same thing, so I'm going to try to bundle them together. Andrei, could you give a bit more details on the process of evaluating a startup? Because you did mention those rough numbers, the 1,500 that we saw and the 50, 60 that got live on SeedBlink. So what happens in between? Can you give us a bit more details on that process?
Sure. Yeah. We have the first contact we have with the startups is through our scouters. Actually, it's a network of salespeople, department of the salespeople in charge with the startups, which they are good to find leads to attract different startups to our platform, and they are getting requests from different startups either on our platform and from different other funnels and that are recommending to us startups. We have right now scouters that are in charge with different regions of Europe. We started from Romania, but right now we are covering from the geography perspective the full Europe. And the scouters are making this, our salespeople are making this first filtering if they are this kind of startups are covering the most important rules that we and the checklist that we have for them for getting them on the platform and getting funding. And there is a process also in their department for getting information from different sources about the founders, about the market. Also, we have a couple of analysts that are making a background check. Of course, we have the legal department that is, they are assessing once we get, we are moving forward, they are assessing the legal status of the company, the due diligence, formal or informal that we are making. It depends on the startup and their phase of being ready for getting funding. Of course, if we have on board an institutional investors as a VC, there is another, let's say, third-party filtering that is offering even more accuracy or more even a better analysis for all the ingredients that are we are assessing for a startup for being successful. And then there is a decision in with the ones that are remaining through this filter. There is a decision to be made by the commercial team if they are proposing further to the funding committee, which is actually consisting of the board, our board. If they are proposing further in the funding committee the startup, then there in the board they are the ugly guys that are accepting or refusing in the final stage a startup to be listed on the platform. So that's why out of more than 1,500 startups through this process, we get to 60. We got to 60 so far.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I was covering the both questions.
Yeah, I think you did. And so there's a lot of things happening in the back end here. I think this is a pretty interesting and important thing to cover. So thank you for that. One other related question, someone is asking, can you recommend a startup to be listed on SeedBlink?
Of course, as mentioned, we have different funnels for getting recommendation for the startups that could be eligible for being funded on SeedBlink. So feel free. Yeah, it's important to talk about tech startups, and not we are focusing only on this industry, and it's recommended to have at least an MVP, or even the startup to have validation from at least several clients, and then we calibrate the discussion further on how we are filtering them and how we can deal with the specific case.
Yeah, okay, that's great. So send them our way. The next one, you mentioned follow-ons. What's the value? Can you give a bit more details on what's the updated value for investors that we provide with this?
Yes, for as mentioned, the follow-ons are a proof, or maybe it's too strong the word the proof. It's a sign, a clear sign that the startup is getting an additional funding round, so they have traction and they have new investors interested to be invested there, meaning they have more chances than a startup in an early stage at the first round to be successful. So looking to the approach of VCs worldwide, actually they are trying to get in their portfolio as possible follow-on rounds, so to be invested in startups that have been validated at least in a second or a third stage. Then they have more and more in their portfolio startups that have more chances to be successful. That's why we can, of course, it's an important notice to be made here. Only the investors that already committed and have taken a higher risk in the first round could be part of these follow-on rounds. Otherwise, that's why it's called follow-on. Otherwise, you don't have access to it because it's already confirmed by a lead investor, which is normally putting the full amount needed in that round. So you, as a former investor in the early stage and more and riskier round, you are allowed to be part also of the second round. Otherwise, as a new investors, normally you are not able to join that second round.
And that's something that everyone just has via SeedBlink, kind of out of the box. So that's for all of our.
Indeed, it's a differentiator for SeedBlink. As we made an assessment to our universe of investment platforms, there are very few that are offering this kind of preemption rights, which is not a simple tool. We are making a lot of legal and bureaucratic work and Excel work and this kind of stuff made by our team in order to make this possible. On the other side, we have negotiated for all the rounds that we have been part of so far these preemption rights.
All right, okay, thank you.
And they are available, it's important to be mentioned, of course, they are available only for the next round. We cannot guarantee it could be available also for the next one. It's a matter of negotiating it when the second round is appearing.
Thank you, Andrei.
Of course, my colleagues are very encouraged to say to add something when they feel there's something to be added.
In the meantime, I'll move on to the next question. But if you do have anything to add, guys, just stop me. And this is a bit more general, but it's interesting. Is it better to invest in multiple startups in the same industry or different industries?
If we are referring to the tech industry, we are the only one that we are offering startups from.
I think maybe not necessarily industries, but verticals. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think we counted, if I'm not mistaken, 17 to 20 different verticals that we already, out of the 60 startups, there in 17 to 20 different verticals they are acting on. If I'm coming back to the main concept of we are focusing on the portfolio investment, yeah, it's more than recommended to look to more than to have a diversification also from this respect. Of course, if you are not aware or not feeling in any kind of vertical a startup is acting on, you don't have to make an investment there just for the sake of having a diversification. So yeah, you have also to have a bit of knowledge in that vertical as well.
All right. And as a follow-up to that, do we have any statistics related to this type of investment vehicle? Like, I think the answer that we're looking for right now, right here, is something like X out of 5 investments generate return, something like that.
Statistics, we don't. We'll build statistics on our portfolio once it will be more and more filled in with new examples and new verticals and new startups. I'm not aware right now, but we can look to different other investment theories. Although it is such a different game with respect to the verticals, to the geographies, to the founders, to the maturity of the startup. So I'm not sure if we can have a very relevant statistics from this point of view. What we are trying to build on with our curation and vetting of startups, we are trying to offer the most we can do with our experience and to what we are building, and to in several years to be well known or to have this reputation as a platform that is having a very let's say a portfolio performance higher than most of the other platforms that you could invest through. So this is our, let's say, our aim and our ambition. Of course, the reality is bringing also to us different obstacles, but this is our aim to offer this kind of better portfolio to invest in than any other platform on the market.
Yeah, I think someone from the team recently said something like, it's better to have no numbers than the wrong numbers. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but we are building on certain things, and I think next month we're ready to release some statistics that we're working on right now that will definitely be interesting. It's never going to be the kind of the final numbers that you can apply for everything, because that's simply not the thing. But we do have something in the pipeline.
Yeah, we have this kind of calculation already on the portfolio, considering also the follow-ons. But of course, we are providing figures once they will be more accurate, and to have all the follow-ons from the first stage investments from last year ready.
Yeah. All right. This is an interesting one. How much money can you raise for a startup? Do we have a maximum or maybe even a minimum?
We have a minimum. Actually, our minimum right now, it's also linked to the operational things that we have to accommodate. It's not making sense for us operation. The cost for raising of less than 100k euro. We had some campaigns that were not achieving this minimum. But on the other side, on the maximum side, we just announced our investment in FlowX, which was limited to 1.6 million euro. Actually, the demand was higher, but we, because of the total round, we had to limit the amount. Also, in terms of it happened in a couple of days to raise this amount through SeedBlink. On the other side, yeah, for sure, it will be more and more opportunities like that.
What I want to add is that also the minimum amount depends on the target amount of the company, because if the company targets to raise 100,000 euros, of course, if we raise only 95,000, of course, this amount will be invested. But operational, we have some additional costs of the investment, incorporation costs that are divided among the investors. And when we have a lower amount, then the costs are higher. So we don't want for the investor to pay a higher cost. We want to have balanced costs according to the investment done. But the minimum sometimes can be a little lower than 100,000 euros, having into consideration the targeted amount by the company.
And I have to make a mention about the maximum amount that is also regulated by the new legislation that came into place yesterday. The maximum limit is 5 million euro for in a period of 12 months that could be raised by a startup through this kind of investment.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thanks both Andrei and Anna. Another one, this is a bit tricky, but let's see if we can answer it. How does the commission that SeedBlink gets out of the profits compare to the commission on other investment platforms? I don't think we can speak to that specifically, but we can give a bit more details about how we do it, maybe.
If it refers, I assume for the investors.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
For the investors, right now we are not charging any fee. It's actually there is a operational fee needed to maintain the SPV that we are building, which is in the range of 1% per year out of the ticket that the investor put in that specific campaign. So it's pro rata with his investment in the SPV. And we apply 7.5% carry when the exit appears. So, and only for the profit. If you would have invested through us 10,000 euro today, and you'll make an exit in 4 years from now, and getting out of that investment 20k. So we charge 7.5% to the difference, meaning to the 10,000 profit. Anna, I hope I was correct with the calculation.
Sorry. Yes, indeed, the carry is 7.5% for the retail campaigns, but we have some special campaigns for elite members where the carry is 5% out of the profit, meaning the collected amount by the SPV minus the initial investment. And this will first also the SPV has to pay taxes. It depends on the period of the investment. how long the SPV will hold the investment. If it's below 1 year, it will apply only 3% of the profit. If the investment is held by the SPV for longer than a year, then will be 3% taxes out of the total collected amount. These are taxes paid by the SPV to the Romanian state authority. Afterwards, the carry will apply, and then the amount collected by the SPV will be divided among the investors according to the percentage owned in the SPV. And regarding the additional costs, we have the operational costs that Andrei already mentioned, 1% of the investment per year. At the beginning, the investors will have to pay for the first 2 years, and also there are some incorporation costs. It depends on the type of the SPV. If we have a limited company, then it will be €1,000. If it's a joint stock company, then it will be €1,500. This incorporation costs are divided among the investor pro rata to the invested amount. These are the costs that these are the additional costs of the investment.
I would just make a note. They are related to the existing framework. Once we get a different operational model, we are working to simplify as much as possible on this in this respect. We of course will announce what will be different in a good way to the existing model.
All right, yeah, I think we covered that question pretty well. I have another one. So for the same budget, is it better to follow on an existing investment or make a new investment in a new company?
I'm not sure if I understood the first part. Is to make a comparison between.
Yeah, so I think it's asking given kind of equal variables, right? So with the same budget, is it better to use your like rights follow on the same company on a new round, or invest in a different new company altogether?
As I mentioned, you can only invest in a follow-on round only if you are invested already. So if you are in this position and to have a proposition for a follow-on round and to have also an alternative to invest in a new company on SeedBlink, if you have a limited amount of money, probably risk-wise is better to invest in the follow-on. Otherwise, because you are invested already there, you want diversification. From this point of view, it's better to have a new one if something is getting your attention and it seems it's a good opportunity for you. So it depends very much on the approach, but just judging from a very limited amount you want to invest in a startup in a certain moment, from the risk perspective, it's better to go with a follow-on investment. But it's also the other way around. If you're not investing in more startups or in a portfolio, you'll not have in the future the opportunity to invest in follow-ons as well.
Yeah, or maybe just the third option, split the money into two and do both.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. This one is related to the regulations that we've been talking about. Someone's asking when they will get into place, when they will be enforced.
Could also Andrei, which has more, my colleague, could add more on this because he's in charge with also with the new regulation. But yesterday it came into force across Europe, but there are different. It's a transition period in different countries that had already a sort of legislation. But Andrei is better to tackle it a bit if you want to develop the topic.
Yes, of course, but Vlad, could you please repeat the question, because I don't think I really understand what the question is.
Yeah, sure. So it's asking when the EU regulations are being put in place.
Okay.
Like date-wise.
It's already in place. So being a regulation and not a directive, it produces its effects as of entering into force. So this EU regulation entered into force yesterday, on the end of November, and it's actually producing its effects beginning with this date. Well, now the companies who are activating in this area, in this crowdfunding area, have 1 year to become authorized. So there is 12 months time span where you can do your business as usual, respecting the actual regulations of the state, but you need to get authorized in this period of time. So I guess this answers the questions. So
yeah, I think
it means it becomes effective immediately. Directives, they're the other way around. They need to get implemented by a law in each state.
Okay, thank you, Andrei. And I think we have room for one more tiny little question before we wrap this up. And that question is, what startups are coming to SeedBlink in the near future that we can talk about at least?
I think we'll announce what's next on SeedBlink. I think quite soon, tomorrow or on Monday. It's already announced. It will be a pitching event with Smart Hub. We right now we have a final call for a fintech from Estonia, Income, that is ending tomorrow, as far as I know, and we have also Branch, which is a startup on the marketing tech vertical that is present on the platform. And as far as I know from the sales team, there are another 3 startups in different stages of preparation for the next future, meaning the next 2 or 3 weeks to be live on SeedBlink in totally different verticals and from different geographies.
Yeah, so we do have a few things that we're working on for the holiday season. So check your inboxes in the next few days.
Yeah, so we are consistent with our approach for helping you building portfolios.
Yeah, all right. Okay, well, I think that was the last one. If there are any questions that we missed, again, we'll kind of go through all of them again offline, and we will answer to them by email. So don't worry, if we didn't answer live, you'll still get an answer, but we kind of need to wrap this up now. I want to thank you again, Andrei, and the other Andrei and Anna. Thank you all for being here. I hope this was useful for everyone. It definitely was for me. So thanks for taking the time, and Andrei, thank you for kind of putting on with COVID to be here. I hope we didn't have any impact on your voice.
And I'm sure I have not spread COVID to any other else in the webinar.
Yeah, fingers crossed. All right. Okay. Well, let's wrap this up. Thanks again, guys. Thanks everyone for joining. If you have any questions, let us know. We're always answering on social media or email. And talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.